Welcome back to Klinga Games. Today we are continuing our Series 10 series with Zamazenta as the restricted of choice. Like I mentioned, I'm mostly going from my favorites to the Pokemon that I'm not not that big of a fan of. Last week was Ho-Oh, my all-time favorite. This week is Zamazenta, who is one of my new favorites. It's the main reason I chose Pokemon Shield over Pokemon Sword, was that I really liked Zamazenta's design. Unfortunately for me, Zacian ended up being probably the best restricted Pokemon in the game, maybe in like the history of the games. I don't know if I'd say that, because Mewtwo in Gen 1 was absolutely busted. But regardless, Zacian is one of the best of all time, and Zamazenta is pretty low tier. It just is outclassed entirely by Zacian for the most part. It does have better bulk, so it can stick around longer, but it doesn't do nearly the same damage output that Zacian does, even with stab on close combat. But I think I found a pretty good way to use it and to maximize on its strengths versus Zacian's. And I built a whole kind of team around that. Hopefully you like it. Unfortunately, I could not show Zamazenta in the Slumbering Weld. I like to show the legendaries in their or I like to show my Pokemon for the teams in their settings. I showed Ho-Oh last week on a mountain. So this is actually the forest in the Isle of Armor, and it's just the fog, which actually looks a lot like the Slumbering Well, so I'm pretty happy with it. Let me know if you like that, or if you think I'm just wasting my time trying to personalize these. But yeah, I made this Zamazenta team. I've got a rental code at the end, as well as in the description, and I'm going to post a PokePaste in the description as well for anyone who wants to try it. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into the battles. Okay, so straight into the first battle against, I'm not sure, who has a Calyrex Shadow, a Nihilego, an Incineroar, Rillaboom, Regieleki, and Urshifu. Urshifu runs around all over the place, but one thing to consider is you never can really know which form it's going to be. Judging by the Incineroar Rillaboom, it's pretty safe to assume Urshifu Water here, because everyone likes to have a good Fire Grass Water core. And I have the same thing on mine with Volcarona, Rillaboom, and Urshifu. So what I'm going to go ahead and bring here is I'm going to bring Obstagoon, Urshifu, with Rillaboom and Zamazenta in the back. Obstagoon was added to this team almost exclusively as a counter to Calyrex Shadow, but it's also pretty good against Incineroar. Obstagoon has the hidden ability of Defiant, which every time your stats are lowered, your attack increases by 2 stages. So if you get intimidated when Incineroar switches in, then your attack goes up to +1 because it goes down 1 and then up 2. So with that, it actually does pretty well against Incineroar as well. And Incineroar, I believe, last time I checked, was the most common Pokemon by a pretty good margin. I think it was like 35% of teams have an Incineroar. So naturally, I try and use it as little as possible, just because that's who I am. But yeah, I think Obstagoon's a really good niche pick, and it does well against one of the best restricteds in the format. So at this turn, I'm switching the Obstagoon out to Rillaboom, and I'm protecting my Urshifu. My guess is that they're going to double up into the Obstagoon, try and get it out of the way for Calyrex Shadow to come in and sweep. So it's best to protect my Obstagoon until the very end, because it's my best answer to Calyrex. Obviously, well, not obviously, Urshifu has an ability called Unseen Fist, which means that it ignores Protect. So normally, against most Pokemon there, I would just protect my Obstagoon with Obstruct, but with Urshifu standing on the other side of the field, you can't really do that because you're going to take the damage, and Obstruct isn't going to get the defense drops that it normally would. So it's best to just switch it into Rillaboom. I was expecting a close combat, so it was nice to see it was nice to just see a Surging Strike, since we resist that. So we have Rillaboom on the field, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fake out their Rillaboom, and I'm going to close combat it just to get maximum damage off. And in case they try and switch Incineroar, this should be a knockout. So it kind of covers both of those. The only downside is if they switched in Calyrex, which I don't think they would because I'm carrying... Rillaboom almost always carries knockout in this format, or knockoff in this format. So I don't think they would risk me trying to make that call. And they do not. And we get a pretty big chunk of damage off onto their onto the Rillaboom, and their Urshifu protects, which puts us in a really good position for the next turn. So because I thought about wood hammering into their Rillaboom here, but because they just use protect, they can't protect again, or they probably can't protect again. They have a 1/3 chance of protecting again. So I just go ahead and I Grassy Glide into the Urshifu, and I take this opportunity to switch in Obstagoon, because Urshifu should get the one-hit KO here against Urshifu, so if they try to attack with close combat, then they're going to get knocked out before they get the chance to. So Obstagoon comes in, they actually double priority attack into the Urshifu slot to try to get the knockout right away. Luckily, Obstagoon has the bulk to take that, but unfortunately, this was a bigger risk than I thought because Grassy Glide does not knock out the Urshifu. They most likely EV'd it specifically to live a Grassy Glide, which is really good on their part. So what I do here is I go ahead and Grassy Glide into the Urshifu, and then I Fire Punch into Rillaboom. I wasn't sure how much damage Fire Punch will do here. Obstagoon is EV'd to outrun 90 base speed Pokemon, and then most of the rest of the EVs are put into HP with just a little bit into attack, so I wasn't sure how much that would do. Unfortunately, just misses the KO on Rillaboom at that health range. So if it was a little bit lower, then I think it would be a pretty good answer, and especially if you're already intimidated / defiant boosted, then it would get the KO. So a little unfortunate just misjudging the HP there, but worse things have happened. So they go ahead and bring in their Calyrex Shadow with my Obstagoon already in the field, which is very nice. And it's also nice that Obstagoon lived that U-turn. After the Grassy Glide damage, I wasn't totally sure if it would live, but it does have max HP, so it is fairly bulky, and it's able to live that super effective attack. Then they bring in their Incineroar, which lowers Rillaboom's attack, and then increases Obstagoon's after the Defiant boost. So we're sitting in a pretty decent position here. Obstagoon obviously is pretty frail right now, but overall we're in a pretty good spot here. So what I do here is I go ahead, I'm expecting a fake out into the Obstagoon to knock it out. So what I do here is I knock off into the Calyrex and I obstruct with Obstagoon, which if you don't know, obstruct is Obstagoon's unique, or I guess signature move, where it's basically protect, but if the opponent makes contact, it lowers their defense and special defense by 2 stages. But I believe, like King Shield, it doesn't protect against status moves, so there is a downside to using it. But I think personally that the lowering the defenses is well worth having the chance of having a status move through protect. So I knock off into Calyrex, which protects, and then they do not fake out, they flare blitz into Obstagoon. But either way, we are protected, and we lower the defenses on their Incineroar, which is really good. So now we're in a position where we have both of our Pokemon have Dark type moves, so we just double up into the Calyrex with Knock Off and Lash Out. They just protected, so they can't protect again. They do substitute here, but my thought process here was that Rillaboom has the ability to live an Astral Barrage, and Obstagoon is immune to it. So they would have to focus into the Obstagoon with a move it's not immune to, which would let Rillaboom have the KO, or they would have to Astral Barrage and hope it gets a crit on Rillaboom, in which case Obstigate's the KO. So that was a pretty safe move. I was planning on basically sacrificing one of my Pokemon to take Calyrex out with me, and that is effectively what happens here. I get the Calyrex knocked out, and Incineroar takes down Obstagoon, but now they are sitting against my 3 Pokemon with just their Rillaboom and Incineroar, and their Incineroar is at -2 defenses, and Rillaboom is at very low health, so at this point there's not a whole lot they can do to bring it back. We played this one pretty good in the early game, got rid of their restricted, and at this point there's not a whole lot of offense on their side of the field. So what we do here is we go ahead and Grassy Glide into the Rillaboom, and we protect the Zamazenta, but they go ahead and just forfeit. So that is game number 1 in the books, and we will go ahead and jump into game number 2. Alright, into game number 2 against Aqua, who fittingly has Kyogre as their restricted, which I enjoy. So they have a Kyogre, a Galarian Weezing, an Incineroar, a Serena, a Rillaboom, and a Moltres. The Kanto Moltres, which I think was really cool. I really like their team. Their team is really unique. But they are a Kyogre team, so I go ahead and lead my Kyogre lead, which is Rillaboom Urshifu, and in the back, eventually, it takes me a little bit just to think about it, I go ahead and bring Zamazenta, and I thought I would bring a Volcarona with the 2 grass types, but I figured in the rain, probably not the best idea. And I go ahead and bring Ninetales as my last Pokemon in the back. And also fittingly, with Aqua, we battle in the Hulberry Stadium. If I'm pronouncing that right. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Hulberry. Or Hulberry. I don't know. But the water type gym, so very fittingly for Aqua and his Kyogre team. So he leads his Galarian Weezing and his Kyogre, and I lead my Rillaboom and my Urshifu. So right off the bat, pretty unique lead here. Normally you kind of set up the rain with Kyogre and the whole team kind of works from there, but with the Galarian Weezing next to it, it does not get the rain up. But it also prevents me from getting my Grassy Train up, so pretty good, pretty interesting positioning by them, and pretty good positioning I would say as well. So what I do for turn 1 is I go ahead and Wood Hammer into the Kyogre slot and Surging Strikes into Weezing. I was expecting them to pull the Weezing back into Serena and attack with Kyogre, but they do not do that, and they keep the Weezing in and get rid of the Moltres, which I thought was very cool. So I go ahead and get my Surging Strikes off into the Weezing, which does about half, pretty good damage there. And then I get a Wood Hammer off into Moltres, which does maybe 10%, probably like 5% there, and a Will-O-Wisp into my Urshifu. At this point, I'm getting a little worried because I don't have a whole lot of damage into Weezing, and 3 of my 4 Pokemon are physical attackers, so if they get a bunch of burns off, then we're in a pretty bad position. So what I do here is I'm expecting them to switch in their Kyogre. So I go ahead and I Grassy Glide into the Weezing slot, or eventually, sorry. So I go ahead and Grassy Glide into the Weezing slot, and I Surging Strikes into Moltres. I Grassy Glide because if they switch out the Weezing into Kyogre, then I would get the Grassy Train up. But they very smartly switch out the Moltres into Rillaboom. So they're doing a really, really good job of switching here. They're switching in all the resists to my main attacks, and I'm really just getting chip damage. So really good, really well played by them. And then Rillaboom gets the Grassy Glide here. Pretty good damage into Weezing, considering it's a resisted attack, and they miss their Will-O-Wisp, which is not It's not unreasonably lucky, it's 85% accurate, so 15% of the time you're going to miss. But even then, I don't think that the damage Rillaboom gives in this battle really affects it a whole lot. So I don't think they, I don't think it was unreasonably lucky there for me. So they switched the Weezing out, and on this turn I knocked off into Rillaboom, and I detected with the Urshifu. I'm expecting it to be Assault Vest, and I've got my Ninetales in the back. So I would like for my Blizzards to do as much damage as possible. So I knock off their Assault Vest, and they switch out their Weezing into Moltres. I think probably expecting another attack from Rillaboom into that slot, but we do not. And I detected Urshifu because I was expecting it to knock off, but it went ahead and just went for the straight Grassy Glide. So I was really happy I protected Urshifu there. So what I do here is I go ahead and do a double swap eventually. I take a lot of time thinking about it, but my two Pokemon here are not in a great position. So I go ahead and switch my Rillaboom into Ninetales, and I switch my Urshifu into Zamazenta, because I'm expecting a Hurricane here from Moltres, or an Air Slash, and I'm expecting another Grassy Glide into Urshifu. So this way, I wouldn't be able to resist both their moves, but I would be able to, I wouldn't be able to resist them, but I would at least be able to do not as much damage as it normally would. Because Zamazenta would take neutral damage from Hurricane, and Ninetales does not resist Grassy Glide, so I figured those were the two best positions to move them to. So they actually bring in their Kyogre, which sets up the Rain, before my Ninetales comes in, which is important because then Ninetales overwrites their Rain with Hail. Unfortunately, they still get the Hurricane to hit. In the Rain, it's 100% accurate. In the Hail or any other weather condition, it's 70%. So a little unfortunate there that they still hit, but, you know, 70% is still 70% of the time. So what I do here is I go ahead and Blizzard, just fishing for a freeze. And I thought about attacking into Moltres, but there's not a whole lot of damage coming from Zamazenta into it, so I go ahead and protect here. So Ninetales has a 109 base speed, so it should outspeed the Kyogre here. And then Moltres, I think, only has 90 as well, so Ninetales should outspeed both. But I get my Protect off here, but I do not get my Blizzard off because their Kyogre uses Water Spout. So their Kyogre moves ahead of my Ninetales, which is impossible without a Choice Scarf because Ninetales is max speed. So this turn right here told me that Kyogre is Choice Scarfed. So that is very important information to have because that tells me that Kyogre cannot protect, which is very important. I was a little surprised that they would have the Galarian Weezing on this team because with neutralizing gas it gets rid of all abilities, and a lot of their Pokemon rely on their abilities. Kyogre needs its Drizzle to set up the Rain. Serena needs its Queenly Majesty to prevent priority moves. And Moltres kind of needs its Flame Body to do the most damage it can. So it kind of surprised me, but they played it really well. So what I do this turn is I go ahead and fake out the Weezing and close combat into the Kyogre slot. My thought process here was that they would switch out their Kyogre because of the Rillaboom on the field. I was right. Unfortunately, they switched in the Moltres, which resists pretty much everything that Zamazenta can do except Crunch. which is not stab, so it's not going to do a whole lot of damage. And then they also get the flame body activation. So my Urshifu and my Zamazenta are now burnt. I've really just been kind of chipping at them. I haven't done a whole lot of damage into their team. So right now it's not looking too good. And then with the hail, burns, and grassy terrain on the field, there's a whole lot of time between moves here. So what I do here is I go ahead and switch my Rillaboom out into Urshifu, and I Behemoth Bash into the Rillaboom slot. Just trying to get as much damage onto it as I can at this point. So their Rillaboom does fake out into Urshifu, which is good. And then Zamazenta gets off its Behemoth Bash. At this point, I figured Zamazenta isn't going to do a whole lot of damage because of the burn, so I'm not too protective of Zamazenta at this point. A lot of the times I have a bad habit of trying to protect my restricteds till the end, but because of how Zamazenta is burnt already in this position, I figured there's not a whole lot of benefit to trying to save it. So, I forgot to mention the other thing is the reason I brought in Urshifu on this turn is because grassy terrain is about to end. So, there's a lot going on in this battle, but that's another thing that I forgot to mention. So, grassy terrain disappears, which means the Rillaboom is not nearly as threatening to the Urshifu. This Urshifu is actually surprisingly bulky, but it will still outspeed Rillaboom. So even though it's not the fastest in the world, it's still faster than the Rillaboom is. So what I do here is I expect them to switch out the Rillaboom because they need that grassy terrain. So I Surging Strikes into the Moltres, and I Close Combat into the Rillaboom slot. So Close Combat comes into the Kyogre after they switch Rillaboom out into it, which does pretty respectable damage. Not a whole lot, but pretty good damage, enough to make Water Spout not the best option moving forward. And then even through the burn, in the rain, Surging Strikes is a clean KO into the Moltres. So Moltres was the biggest problem on their team for us, and it was really good to get it out of the way there. So now we are sitting against a half HP Kyogre, and then low HP Rillaboom and Weezing. So even though we have two burnt Pokemon and a Rillaboom in the back, we're in a pretty good spot here, all things considered. So what I do here is I go ahead and Surging Strikes into the Weezing, and I protect the Zamazenta, expecting them to attack it. Zamazenta has the Behemoth Bash, which I've already shown, which is super effective against Weezing. So my thought process here is that they will prioritize getting rid of Zamazenta, which they do, but unfortunately they also protect their Weezing here. So this Thunder is protected against, but we don't really gain anything in the process, because with Weezing on the field, we cannot attack through Protect. So then we get the carousel of status conditions, getting the burn, the black sludge. So what I do here is I stick with the Surging Strikes into the Weezing, and I Behemoth Bash into the Weezing as well. Kind of just, my thought process here was I want to just sacrifice one Pokemon to take Weezing out. Because at this point I need Grassy Terrain up to take care of the Kyogre, and we need Weezing off the field to set that up. But we do get the Thunder KO, or they get the Thunder KO on the Urshifu. We don't get that. And then we get the Behemoth Bash into the Weezing slot. Which does pretty good damage, but unfortunately just barely misses out on the KO due to the burn. But luckily they Sludge Bomb into the Zamazenta, which I believe is their only attacking move on this Weezing. So pretty good there. Pretty good damage. Weezing is now easily in KO range, and Kyogre is stuck into Thunder with Rillaboom coming on the field. So what I do here is I go ahead and fake out the Weezing, and I close combat into the Kyogre slot. I'm expecting it to switch out, and I just want to knock out the Rillaboom on the switch. Which Rillaboom does come in, Kyogre switches out, and their Weezing protects. So we do the fake out, but we didn't need to because they protected. But it's always safer to fake out in that position. And then we get the close combat onto the Rillaboom, which is a nice KO there. Unfortunately, we've used a lot of close combats here, so we're pretty low on defenses. But Kyogre's Choice Scarf and Weezing only has Sludge Bomb, so Kyogre is going to have to be forced to pick a move that will do the most damage to both Pokemon, which there isn't a great answer there, because Thunder is the best against Zamazenta, but Rillaboom eats that up, and then Ice Beam is the best against Rillaboom, but Zamazenta will eat that up. So I go ahead and protect Zamazenta here, expecting Thunder or Water Spout, but they do go ahead and Ice Beam into the Rillaboom slot, which does about half with the Assault Vest, and then Wood Hammer just takes out Kyogre from there, which is big. And then Kyogre goes down, we take a pretty big chunk of recoil there, and Weezing knocks out the Rillaboom. So now we are 1v1 with Zamazenta, who is burnt, against Weezing, who is carrying Black Sludge and only has Sludge Bomb as the ability. So at this point, it's really just a game of, can they recover enough HP to prevent a Behemoth Bash KO, and can I stay around long enough to get that Behemoth Bash off? Luckily, with the HP we have just enough HP to play for 3 more turns. So the only thing they can do is protect here. So if they get a triple protect, they would win, but anything short of that and we win. Behemoth Bash is 100% accurate. So there's not really any risk of us missing. It's really just a question of how many protects will they get off here. So they obviously they get the first protect off. They do not get the second one, and Behemoth Bash from Zamazenta will get the KO here. I'm speaking ahead of the video again. I have a bad tendency to do that, but Behemoth Bash gets the KO on the Weezing, and that goes ahead and secures us the win against Aqua, who played really well. Really great switching at the early game. So really good game to you, Aqua. And we'll go on to game number 3. Alright, on to game number 3 against Tapu Lulu, which I actually really love that name, if you watch this. They have a Zacian, a Gothitelle, an Urshifu, a Primarina, a Incineroar, and a Rillaboom. So they have the Urshifu, which I couldn't really tell which form it was, because they already have a water type in Primarina. So they could be doubling up into the water type to help with Zacian's fire type weaknesses, or they could be running the Dark Urshifu as kind of a wild card against teams. So what I lead here is I lead my Volcarona and my Rillaboom. Eventually, sorry, I keep getting ahead of it. I'm worried about the Gothitelle, so I feel like I have to lead Volcarona, because I don't want to get trapped against Zacian without Volcarona on the field. And then I bring Urshifu and Zamazenta in the back. So unfortunately, the battles were all in the normal online stadium, I thought I changed my trainer card to play in the Dojo Stadium, but it never actually worked out that way, so I'm not sure what I did wrong there. Going forward, I want to try to kind of personalize the stadiums for the restricted that I'm using. I haven't done it so far, but that's something I want to start doing. So they go ahead and lead their Pre-Marina and their Gothitelle, which worries me with the Volcarona here. So my first thought was that they might go ahead and fake out and Hyper Voice to get rid of my Volcarona. So I go ahead and protect it, and I fake out I knock off into the Gothitelle. Unfortunately, they fake out into the Rillaboom, so I don't get an attack off, and they Perish Song me. So I got gimmicked pretty hard there with the Perish Song on turn 1, and with the Gothitelle. So what I do this turn is I try and maximize my damage into Gothitelle. I go ahead and I Fiery Dance into Gothitelle, and I knock off into it as well. Try and get as much damage as I can. Unfortunately, what they do here is they withdraw Gothitelle into the Incineroar, which is frustrating, but my thought process was that, okay, next turn I can switch these two out, everything will be okay. So they get the Intimidate off, which doesn't really matter to Volcarona, but it matters into the Rillaboom. So we get the Fiery Dance off. And then we Wood Hammer, or I'm sorry, we Wood Hammered into the Gothitelle. I marked that wrong, but we go ahead and we Wood Hammer into the Gothitelle slot, which does almost nothing to Incineroar, and they flip turn out the Pre-Marina. And they bring Gothitelle back onto the field, so I still can't switch out here. And then we fall down to Perish count of 2, and both the Pokemon that were in for their Perish Song are out of the field now. So what I go ahead and do here is I try to maximize damage into the Gothitelle again. But unfortunately they double fake out here, which we do get a little bit of nice damage with the Rocky Helmet into Incineroar. But they go ahead and fake out into Volcarona, and they fake out into the Rillaboom. So they have successfully stopped me from moving at all this turn. And I can't switch out. And then they just keep getting healed from it. So we are down to Perish count 1 here. So what I do here is I just try to maximize my damage into the Gothitelle and don't worry about recoil. Unfortunately, both their Pokemon have Protect as well. So I just lost 2 of my Pokemon without doing anything in return. At this point in the battle, I was getting a little bit tilted, because I think it's pretty easy to see why. So Volcarona and Rillaboom both just go down here. So I go ahead and bring out my Urshifu and my Zamazenta, and at this point I am fully tilted, as you can see from the next turn. So I bring these 2 out, get my Dauntless Shield boost up, and what I do here is I go ahead and Surging Strikes, and I close combat into the Incineroar slot. I Surging Strikes and Behemoth Bash into Incineroar, which is very stupid of me for 2 reasons. 1, they're obviously going to switch out their Incineroar with Urshifu facing it down, and 2, Incineroar is not the threat on their team, Gothitelle is. So I don't know why I did this, but I doubled up into the Pre-Marina slot, or into the Incineroar slot instead of targeting down the Gothitelle. I think it's pretty obvious to tell by now that I lose this battle. And my my strategy at the end was very poor. I still had a chance to win at this point, I believe, but I should have targeted down the Gothitelle, because then Gothitelle sets up Trick Room, which normally wouldn't be too bad of a thing because it gets Zacian in the back, but it means that their Primarina is gonna go first here. So what I do here is I go ahead and just double down on it with Surging Strikes and Behemoth Bash, and they switch Gothitelle out into Incineroar again. So we get the attacks drop here, which is not good for either of my Pokemon. The Urshifu doesn't totally mind because of the automatic critical hits from Surging Strikes, but it's still a little frustrating here. So we go ahead, we get our double attack off into the Primarina, which does not live the Surging Strikes. If I would have Surging Strike and close combated here, we might be in a pretty good spot, but unfortunately I Behemoth Bash, trying to get maximum damage onto the Primarina. And we do almost nothing to Incineroar. So then our Perish count falls to 3. And then what I do here is I was originally going to close combat, or I do close combat into the Incineroar. Sorry, I close combat into the Incineroar and I crunch into Gothitelle. But then they go ahead and they parting shot into my Zamazenta. So that is just very frustrating there. And then they bring in their Zacian here. So we do get to see both doggos on the field, which is nice. And then Zamazenta does a crunch here, which does about a quarter there. So even without the parting shot, we were still not going to be taking it out. So what we do here is we Surging Strikes into the Zamazenta, and we close combat into the Gothitelle. And they bring in their Incineroar. We lose our attack some more. And they protect their Zacian. Fortunately, we do have the Unseen Fist ability, so we still get the Surging Strikes into Zacian, but at this point, there's no feasible way to win this game. Even if we got critical hits on every single attack from now on, we would still lose because of Fake Out. And we do get the close combat here, which if we got the critical hit there, pretty easy KO. Or if we were one less attack drop, but our Perish count falls to 1, and there's not a whole lot we can do at this point. So we go ahead and Surging Strikes into the Zacian slot, and close combat into Incineroar. They do fake out the Urshifu, so we do not get a Surging Strikes here, but we do get the close combat into Incineroar, which lowers our defenses, but does get the KO. And then Zacian hits us with a Sacred Sword, which we actually survive. So we do lose this game because of Perish Song. I think it was a winnable game. I think there was a chance to win, but I got very tilted after the first Perish Song, and my opponent capitalized. So a really good game to them. Alright, and now on to the fourth and final game against the Lunala team. With Lunala, Tapu Lele, Incineroar, Rillaboom, Urshifu, and Stakataka. Again, I think we can assume Water Urshifu based on the Fire, Water, Grass core. And probably can assume Choice Scarf on the Lele. That seems to be the most common item that's ran on it. So I lead Zamazenta Obstagoon with Volcarona and eventually eventually Ninetales in the back. I apologize for the subpar commentary on game number 3. It's just really frustrating even now, just to go back and watch to see how poorly I played there. And that Perish Trap gimmick was just... I was not expecting that in the slightest, so... I mean, I give myself... I kind of beat myself up over not seeing it coming, but at the same time, how would I see that coming? So just really, really well played by Tapu Lulu there. And again, I really love that name. So great strategy, great name by Tapu Lulu. So they lead their Tapu Lele and Lunala against my Obstagoon and Zamazenta here. So I believe that my thought process was their Lunala was not going to stick in with both of these Pokemon here, and that their Tapu Lele would be Choice Scarf and would go with Moonblast into Obstagoon. So what I do here is I go ahead and obstruct with Obstagoon, and I Behemoth Bash into the Tapu Lele. They do switch out the Lunala into Incineroar, so my Obstagoon gets an attack boost, and my Zamazenta gets an attack drop. Zamazenta isn't exactly Zacian when it comes to attack power, but it still has a very respectable attack stat, and my Zamazenta has, I believe, 156 attack EVs. So they go ahead and Moonblast into the Protect, doesn't do any damage, and then we get the Behemoth Bash off into Tapu Lele, which I really love the animation for Behemoth Bash. It and Behemoth Blade, whatever Zacian's version of it is. But I really love the animations for it. I love that they gave them the huge animations for their signature moves. But, like I was saying before, Tapu Lele has very low physical defense, and Zamazenta has better than you'd expect attack stat. So we do get the one-hit KO on Tapu Lele, which is the biggest threat to Obstagoon. That said, the second biggest threat to Obstagoon switches in here, which is the Urshifu Water. So we can't protect in front of it. We just did protect, so even if we wanted to, we couldn't protect again. So what we do here is we switch Obstagoon out into Volcarona, and I switch the Zamazenta out into the Ninetales. I thought about attacking here, but both these Pokemon are super effective against Zamazenta. So I switch Obstagoon out into Volcarona, and I switch Zamazenta out into Ninetales here, because they could very easily just fake out and knock out either of my Pokemon. So it's safe just to switch them out and keep my two biggest threats against Lunala safe here. So I go ahead and bring in Volcarona the Lively, which I caught in a dive ball, which I really enjoyed. And I apologize for the minor clickbait. I put Ninetales on the thumbnail, but it doesn't really do anything here. Normally Ninetales' role is to set up a Roller Veil, but in all the battles I showed here, it wasn't in position to do that. So I really like the Ninetales though, and I think it, even though the hail hurts everyone on my team as well, the chip damage and then setting up a Roar Veil can be very, very useful, especially early on against Zacian teams, because those teams kind of live and die based on how much damage they do. So getting a Roar Veil up against them usually can really turn the tide, but we didn't really get a chance to do that in any of these games. So unfortunately Ninetales goes down, and we get the Zamazenta in here. So what I do here, I don't know why I thought about doing Struggle Bug. That was just a bad move. So I go ahead and I Fiery Dance into the Urshifu, and I Close Combat into the Urshifu as well. I'm not totally threatened by the Incineroar, and Urshifu is the biggest threat to my Obstagoon in the back, which is also my biggest answer into the Lunala. So they go ahead and Surging Strikes here into the Volcarona slot, which Volcarona gets hit 3 times, but we have the Rocky Helmet on it, which does damage every time it's hit. So we actually get 3 Rocky Helmet, I guess, damage on it. I don't know what to call that. So we get the 3 Rocky Helmet damages onto it, and we get the burn with Flame Body. So that really could not have gone better. And then we also don't get KO'd by the Surging Strikes. We will get KO'd by the Hail, but we knock out the Urshifu with Zamazenta, and then we are able to get a Fiery Dance onto Lunala just to get some damage onto it. If you're not aware, Lunala's ability limits damage when it's at full health, but once it's already taken some damage, that ability doesn't activate. So we've got Lunala with some damage on it in the Hail, and we have our 2 best attackers into it with the Obstagoon and the Zamazenta. Obstagoon has the Lash Out and Zamazenta has the Crunch. Both moves were added, or Obstagoon was added entirely for Calyrex Shadow, and then Crunch was added as well for Calyrex Shadow, but Calyrex Shadow and Lunala have the same typing, so both of the moves are just as effective against Lunala as they are against Calyrex. So what we do here is we close combat into Incineroar with both Pokemon. The thought process here was that if they faked out one, the other would get the close combat off and KO. Unfortunately, they don't fake out, so we do get the close combats off, but only one of them was needed to knock out Incineroar. And so Obstagoon goes ahead and close combats into the Lunala, who is Ghost type, so it doesn't actually do anything. And then they go ahead and get the Meteor Beam off here. So they do the first turn, get the boost, and then they are Power Herb Lunala, which is interesting. But they miss, which is really unfortunate for them. But I ran the calcs after the game. Obstagoon, depending on how much attack investment they have, Obstagoon may have lived that. And then even if Obstagoon was KO'd, Crunch would have been enough to win against Lunala. If it was max HP, max defense Lunala, which I don't think it was, Crunch still does like 60%. So really good game to Sophie, and that is the last of the games for today. Okay, so here is the team and the rental code for my Zamazenta team, which I have affectionately named Doggo. So first up we have Zamazenta with the Dauntless Shield ability and the Rusted Shield item, who is running Protect, Close Combat, Iron Head, and Crunch. Zamazenta is max HP and then 100 EVs in speed and 156 in attack, which gives it the speed necessary to outrun a lot of common threats, and then just the rest into attack just to give it the maximum damage output. The second Pokemon is Ninetales with Snow Warning and Light Clay, running Protect, Aurora Veil, Blizzard, and Moonblast. Ninetales is just a really fun support Pokemon. Aurora Veil is amazing, with not a whole lot of teams running Weather, mostly just Kyogre and Groudon teams, but even then it can be really useful just to overwrite their Weather. And then Blizzard can fish for freezes, and Moonblast can be helpful against Shadow Rider and Xerneas, trying to get the special attack drops. It's not totally reliable, but it can be useful if you think that Ninetales is the best Pokemon to bring. The third Pokemon is Obstagoon, which I was really happy I was able to find a role for. When I first built this team, I don't remember who I had there. I think it was Wigglytuff actually, but I kept losing to Calyrex Shadow Rider teams, and it kind of hit me that Obstagoon is immune to both of its stab moves, so it seemed like the perfect answer with Defiant for the Incineroars that are always running with it. So Obstagoon with Defiant and Chople Berry to limit fighting type damage. It can actually live a Miyin Shao close combat at max HP, so it can survive pretty good damage with that Chople Berry. with Obstruct, Lash Out, Close Combat, and Fire Punch. Obstruct is very, very nice against Incineroars and Mienshao especially. If they try and fake it out, then they get their defense lowered and then your partners can take it out. And then Lash Out, Close Combat, and Fire Punch. Lash Out is just its best Dark-type move. Close Combat does really, really well. It makes it a nice answer to Incineroar. And then Fire Punch was mostly for Rillabooms. But as you can see in one of the games, the Fire Punch is a little underwhelming. But with an attack boost, it should be pretty good damage. Fourth Pokemon was Volcarona with Flame Body and Rocky Helmet with Protect, Rage Powder, Fiery Dance, and Struggle Bug. Rage Powder is really nice against Zacian teams. And then Fiery Dance is really against Zacian teams. And then Struggle Bug is really good against Xerneas and Calyrex teams. Especially if you can have it in before Xerneas boosts up. You can just kind of spam Struggle Bug, and then before you know it, Xerneas is doing no damage, even after Geomancy. So it's a really, really useful Pokemon on the team. And then Flame Body and Rocky Helmet, as you can see, is perfect against Urshifu Water, because it takes 3 Rocky Helmet damages, and it has triple the chance for a Flame Body activation. So it's really good against a lot of threats to Zamazenta. Fourth is Rillaboom, pretty standard Rillaboom. Grassy Surge, Assault Vest with Grassy Glide, Knockoff, Wood Hammer, and Fake Out. Wood Hammer is a one-hit KO against every Kyogre. Grassy Glide is a one-hit KO against most Kyogres, but a lot of them run with Serena these days, so Wood Hammer is a nice alternative. And then Knockoff is another great move against Calyrex Shadow Riders. If you can catch Pokemon coming in, especially Power Herb Pokemon, it's amazing. And then Fake Out is just the best move in the game. And then last is Urshifu Water with Unseen Fist and Mystic Water is the ability, with Detect, Surging Strikes, Close Combat, and Aqua Jet. This Urshifu is actually, most of them runs max speed, max attack. This one is actually mostly special defense bulk, and then just a little bit into speed and attack, which you can actually survive a lot of special moves that you wouldn't expect it to, and then do some pretty good damage in return. And then it also lives a Sacred Sword from Zacian with this spread. So I think it's a really fun team. I'm going to put a Pokepaste in the description, along with just repeating this rental code. If anyone's interested, feel free to rent it. I would love to run against my Zamazenta team on the ladder, if anybody finds this and likes it. So yeah, that's the team. Hopefully you liked it. Hopefully you want to give it a shot. Let me know if you use it, what you think. And then I'll go ahead and do my outro, not intro. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the videos. I hope you like Zamazenta as much as I do. It was really, really cool Pokemon to me. I actually kind of like the story involving them in Eternatus. I know that's kind of a unpopular opinion. Sword and Shield seem to be not everyone's favorites, we'll say it that way. But I really enjoyed the games. This is probably the ones I've spent the most time with. And I really like Zamazenta. It's a really cool legendary in my opinion. I love its crowned form. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the team. I hope you give the team a trial run. Or if you can find some way to improve the team, that'd be cool too. So leave me a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Coming up will be the end of the QBA season. We're in the playoffs. I have a first round bye, so next week should be the first playoff video for me. Hopefully not the last. And then I'll be posting some more of these Series 10 videos, and then eventually some Nuzlockes that I'm doing. I'm not sure how exactly I'm going to structure those and script those, so that's kind of what I'm working on there. But there will definitely be more Series 10 videos, almost definitely with the underused restricteds. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and subscribe. I want to say a big shout out to Andy La VGC and Gigawatts94. I kind of ran by my original team for them. They gave me some pointers, especially the Rocky Helmet on Volcarona. So big thanks to them for helping me perfect the team. And yeah, hope to see you again. Thank you.